So I'm Katherine. My husband and I have 5 beautiful children. Most of them are in primary school. I'm a Kiwi Asian woman. My parents came here from Hong Kong in the 80s, and I grew up mostly speaking English in East Auckland. I studied at Auckland Uni, and I graduated as the top scholar of my class, with a very promising career in front of me, but I decided I'd rather raise my kids full-time. So that's what I've done for the last 10 years. So I want to start by sharing this image with you that a friend shared with me. I really like it because it shows a child at the centre being nurtured with a village of healthy relationships. First the family, grandparents, extended family, and finally school as part of that village. However, nowadays this has become fractured. Families are under increasing pressure. We have more single-parent homes. Extended family might live far away or overseas. And without all these traditional relationships to support parents and kids, schools are often having to pick up the heavy role of raising our children. But whose role is it really to raise a child? It's parents. Parents have the first authority and responsibility to direct the upbringing of their own child. This is the legal assumption in both the common law and the law of nature in the US and UK courts. It is a fundamental premise of the law that children are vulnerable and therefore need parental oversight and care because of their age. That's why we have age-based laws like the drinking age and the driving age. Children need physical, mental, emotional, and intellectual care and protection, and who better to do this than the parents who brought that child into the world? In New Zealand, we have the Care of Children Act 2004, which established the common law position and expanded it to include parents as having responsibilities and duties, as well as common law rights without limitation to determine all important matters concerning the child. That includes education, name, culture, religion, practice, home residence, and medical treatment. Even the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights states that parents have the prior right to choose their child's education. So it's not the state and not the school's job to raise a child. It's a parent's job. We parents have, by legislation, delegated this to the ministry, but the delegation does not abrogate our rights and responsibilities. Today, my goal is not to tell your family what to do or think, but to raise awareness and empower you to decide what is best for your family. I will show you what the Ministry of Education wants and has been teaching your child about sexuality, and you can decide if you want to choose this kind of education for your child. So what is gender ideology? West and Zimmerman say a person's gender is not simply an aspect of what one is, but more fundamentally, it is something one does and does recurrently in interaction with others. Kimmel says, in saying that we do gender, we are saying that gender is not only something that is done to us, we can recreate and create our own gendered identities in the context of our interactions with others and within the institutes we inhabit. The concept of gender is not scientific fact. It is an ideological belief. Science uses testing and observation to find objective, irrefutable facts. But gender ideology takes the facts that everyone sees and agrees on, then reinterprets them with this belief that genetic expression is socially constructed and is a matter of personal preference. Gender ideology assumes there is no God to give divine purpose or the right way of using the physical world. Therefore, the body is just matter to be moulded by the mind. This means that people can justifiably disassociate from their body in order to express their true inner authentic person. So key policies for schools. The Ministry of Education has gender policies in these 2 documents: the Inclusive Education Policy on Supporting LGBTIQA+ students and the Relationship and Sexuality Education Guidelines 2020 for both primary school and high school. School boards have some flexibility to decide what degree to which they engage, and these policies include eroding fixed categories based on biological sex, such as for toilet use, name, clothing, pronouns, and lining up, even the idea that puberty is normal or normative for either a girl or a boy. affirming and destigmatising diverse genders and sexualities, disciplining gender-based bullying with both formal policy and an informal anti-bullying culture, weaving LGBTIQA+ content through all subjects like science, technology and art, actively highlighting and celebrating people in the school who are LGBTIQA+, giving kids referrals and access to support services like nurses and counsellors, and keeping transition hidden from parents if the child does not want to tell. So how have some New Zealand schools responded to these policies? Beckenham School. This is a primary school. It has been highlighted as an effective practice model on the official health education website. The approach is spearheaded by the principal, and she uses Inside Out and Qtopia for professional development for her teachers. Any relievers who don't support these school values are asked to excuse themselves off the list. The school uses book displays, stories with transgender characters, and raising the pride flag on the flagpole to show inclusion. Students can choose to wear any item on the uniform list, and they are taught that using other people's pronouns will prevent bullying. Teachers put their own pronouns on their email signatures, and they avoid dividing children up in lines of boys and girls. Primary and intermediate schools. Family First New Zealand have compiled some testimonies from parents about what their children are being taught. These include 9-year-olds being shown graphic sexual pictures from the book How to Make a Baby by Vanna Fisk. 10-year-olds being given a surprise sexuality talk by their teacher, including the question, what would you do if you woke up one morning and you were a different gender? 11-year-olds at Tauraroa Area School taught about different sex methods, genital, digital, object, oral and anal, using resources from family planning. The school PTA promoting a drag queen fundraiser event through the students. A 12-year-old girl suddenly coming home saying she is trans despite having other mental health issues and having been very girly up till now. The psychologist told parents that she was born in the wrong body and wished to begin her on blockers immediately. Family Planning's Navigating the Journey resource is one suggested to teachers that follows the New Zealand health curriculum. They can choose from a variety, and this is one of them. This includes teaching children from age 5 very specific terms, including bottom, breast, nipple, vulva, vagina, penis, scrotum, and testicles. Children from age 7 are given pictures of what the adults and children around them might look like if they were naked. Children from age 11 begin to discuss sexual intercourse, including sexual thoughts and vaginal secretions. Now, is this necessary? Does a child knowing this information prevent sexual abuse? Does a child knowing this information desensitize a child to discussing these topics with other people? I'll let you answer those questions for yourself. And how are secondary schools and their boards enacting the new policies? I contacted one mother from Whangarei Girls High whose 14-year-old daughter brought home this information from Family Planning. It includes teaching children about, well, these are 14-year-olds, about fantasy talk, touching your partner's body or genitals, touching breast or nipple, rubbing bodies together with your clothes on, masturbating in front of each other, online sex, masturbating while talking, licking apart from the genitals, anything else that gives both people pleasure. A mother from Northcote College posted that her 15-year-old son was given this worksheet on the left before watching a video about masturbation. He felt quite traumatised afterwards. I'll read out the questions. What is biological sexual identity? What is core gender identity? What is gender role identity? What is sexual orientation? What is sexual identity? What is sexual behaviour? On the right, Takapuna Grammar Year 12 health students were given this heterosexuality questionnaire to challenge their bias towards heterosexuality over other sexualities. It includes questions like, what causes heterosexuality? When did you know your sexual orientation? How easy would it be for you if you wanted to change your orientation starting now? Maclean's College Year 10 health students are given worksheets to challenge myths and situations that might be found when watching porn. For example, the myth that most men have large penises, most people don't use condoms, sex is better when it is fast and rough, women enjoy being physically hurt, women only look good with large breasts, all women enjoy threesomes, and sex lasts for hours. And then they're supposed to correct that myth as part of the worksheet. Gender and sexuality are taught as being changeable things, yet not a choice. The Deputy Principal has confirmed that these materials follow the New Zealand Health Curriculum and that they also use resources from the New Zealand Health Education Association. Inside Out Kawaro, a registered charity, received $100,000 of taxpayer funds. It was contracted to the MOE to help draft the inclusive education policy and the relationship and sexuality guidelines. Inside Out's mission in their deed of constitution is to establish queer straight alliances in secondary schools for LGBTIQA plus youth and to set up and maintain these indefinitely. One of Inside Out's fundamental policies is that parents should not be informed automatically if their child chooses to change their name and gender. Official Information Act requests show that no legal advice was obtained by the ministry before it adopted this policy. I have heard first-hand accounts from parents whose children had their names and pronouns changed at school, but this was done in secrecy without parental consent. In one case, the mother found out by accident. In another case, the mother alleges that she didn't even know that her child's name and gender had been changed 8 months earlier, until one afternoon, the school counsellor moved her child out of her home to a different place of residence. This was devastating for both of these families. Inside Out recently advertised a Zoom event on their official Facebook page. It was a drag queen panel called School Them for kids aged 13 plus and was supervised by Inside Out staff. Some of the chosen drag performers, such as Willie Smackintosh and Miss Gina, show sexualised photos on their public Facebook pages and perform at adult events. Inside Out's rainbow inclusive curriculum ideas reference Dr. John Money. While he is credited here for intersex research, Dr. John Money was a famous New Zealand sexologist most well known for his gender and sexual experimentation on 2 boys, the Reimer twins. Money forced the boys to rehearse sexual acts while he photographed them. It was also found later that he had groomed the boys to the point that they became willing victims of sexual relations with him. Both twins were traumatised by this therapy and died before age 40 from drug overdose and suicide. Dr. Money was an advocate of paedophilia, or adults having sex with children. In Paidika 1991, he said, "If I were to see the case of a boy aged 10 or 12 who is intensely attracted to a man in his 20s or 30s, if the relationship is totally mutual and the bonding is genuinely totally mutual, then I would not call it pathological in any way." Do you think a professor who sexually abused children and supports paedophilia is a good reference model for children to learn about? Would you choose this kind of education for your child? Would you choose these social norms for the next generation? Paedophilia remains a crime in current New Zealand law. Under Part 7 of the Crimes Act 1961, sexual grooming of and sexual crimes inflicted against and on children, or paedophilia, carry with them heavy prison sentences. These penalties are there as a deterrent against these crimes and for the protection of the most vulnerable in our society, children. Children and young people are vulnerable to sexual grooming from predators because of their underdeveloped critical thinking skills, with the Reimer twins being a key example. The stories I've shown you indicate that the Ministry of Education's resources do expose children and young people to graphic sexual knowledge beyond essential sex education. The normalised class discussion format of sexual topics with non-family adults and classmates causes the loss of stigma that in the past would alert a child to predatory behaviour. The repeated graphic discussion of sexual topics to teens at a critical time when their sexual awareness is developing can lead to the formation of addictive sexual habits due to the dopamine reinforcement. Notions of consent, or public decency are relatively weak limitations on pleasure. It is not inconceivable for there to come a day when children in New Zealand become sufficiently sexualised by such an approach to education that they become promiscuous and enter highly dangerous, immoral, indecent sexual behaviours due to their mental immaturity and their inability to deal with such onslaughts. It is not inconceivable for very organised sexual predators to force the removal of Part 7 protections, as they will argue that such protection is no longer needed since the children have become or are able to become willing sexual partners with adults. We must therefore strongly resist this graphic sexual approach of the ministry to sexuality education. New Zealand hasn't had gender ideology entrenched for long enough yet for detransition and transition to become commonplace. However, some detransitioning youth are coming forward to voice their regret at the permanent effects of their transition. Chloe Cole was given puberty blockers and testosterone at age 13, followed by the double mastectomy of her breasts at 15, and she gives a powerful testimony against transitioning children here.
And I'm a detransitioner. Another way to put that would be, I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life whom I trusted affirmed my belief, and this caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. I speak to you today as a victim of one of the biggest medical scandals in the history of the United States of America. I speak to you in the hope that you will have the courage to bring the scandal to an end and ensure that other vulnerable teenagers, children, and young adults don't go through what I went through. At the age of 12, I began to experience what my medical team would later diagnose as gender dysphoria. I was well into an early puberty, and I was very uncomfortable with the changes that were happening to my body. I was intimidated by male attention, and when I told my parents that I felt like a boy, in retrospect, all I meant was that I hated puberty, that I wanted this newfound sexual attention to go away, that I looked up to my brothers a little bit more than I did to my sisters. I came out as transgender in a letter I sent on the dining room table. My parents were immediately concerned. They felt like they needed to get outside help from medical professionals, but this proved to be a mistake. It immediately set our entire family down a path of ideologically motivated deceit and coercion. The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty-blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question: would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? The choice was enough for my parents to let their guard down, and in retrospect, I can't blame them. This was the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care. I was fast-tracked onto puberty blockers and then testosterone. The resulting menopausal-like hot flashes made focusing on school impossible. I still get joint pains and weird pops in my back, but they were far worse when I was on the blockers. A month later, when I was 13, I had my first testosterone injection. This caused permanent changes to my body. My voice will forever be deeper, my jawline sharper, my nose longer, my bone structure permanently masculinized, my Adam's apple more prominent, my fertility unknown. I look in the mirror sometimes and I feel like a monster. I had a double mastectomy at 15. They tested my amputated breast for cancer. And I was cancer-free, of course. I was perfectly healthy. There was nothing wrong with my still developing body or my breasts, other than that, as an insecure teenage girl, I felt awkward about it. After my breasts were taken away from me, the tissue was incinerated. Before I was able to legally drive, I had a huge part of my future womanhood taken from me. I will never be able to breastfeed. I struggle to look at myself in the mirror at times. I still struggle to this day with sexual dysfunction. And I have massive scars across my chest, and the skin grafts that they took of my nipples are weeping fluid today, and they were grafted into a more masculine positioning, they said. After surgery, my grades in school plummeted. Everything that I went through did nothing to address my underlying mental health issues that I had. And my doctors, with their theories on gender, thought that all my problems would go away as soon as I was surgically transformed into something that vaguely resembled a boy. Their theories were wrong. The drugs and surgeries changed my body, but they did not and could not change the basic reality that I am and forever will be a female. When my specialist first told my parents that they could have a dead daughter or a live transgender son, I wasn't suicidal. I was a happy child who struggled because she was different. However, at 16, after my surgery, I did become suicidal. I'm doing better now, but my parents almost got the dead daughter promised to them by my doctors. My doctors had almost created the very nightmare they said they were trying to avoid. So what message do I want to bring to American teenagers and their families? I didn't need to be lied to. I needed compassion. I needed to be loved. I needed to be given therapy to help me work through my issues, not affirm to my delusion that by transforming into a boy, it would solve all my problems. We need to stop telling 12-year-olds that they were born wrong, that they are right to reject their own bodies and feel uncomfortable with their own skin. We need to stop telling children that puberty is an option, that they can choose what kind of puberty they will go through, just so they can choose what clothes to wear or what music to listen to. Puberty is a rite of passage to adulthood, not a disease to be mitigated. Today, I should be at home with my family celebrating my 19th birthday, and instead I'm making a desperate plea to my elected representatives. Learn the lessons from other medical scandals like the opioid crisis, to recognize that doctors are human too, and sometimes they are wrong. My childhood was ruined along with thousands of detransitioners that I know through our networks. This needs to stop. You alone can stop it. Enough children have already been victimized by this barbaric pseudoscience. Please let me be your final warning. Thank you.
Today's your birthday?
It is.
You're a beautiful, brave woman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
A little bit closer to home, 7 News Australia aired a documentary called Detransitioning, and several young people who regretted their transition give testimony. Here's a very short clip from one young woman, Mel Jeffries, speaking about her gender care leaving her worse off.
Are you with me?
So you're here telling me that despite the testosterone and the double mastectomy, you're no better off?
Are you with me?
No, I'm worse off.
I am begging you to come back on my side. We are hanging by a thread and you keep reaching for your knife to cut it.
As I said at the beginning, Mel Jeffries is a brave woman. She wanted to show you. She wanted to be heard. She believed becoming a man would heal her. But it didn't.
I'm never gonna be over it. It's not even like... They're wounds, they're not even scars, so it's like I'm still bleeding. I'm still like processing it and grieving. Like, I've literally like been violated by the medical industry.
Are you with me?
So some of you might be okay with what I've showed you tonight, the gender ideology and sexual content being taught in our schools, and you have the right to think that and to choose for your children the kind of education that you want them to have. But I'm not okay about it. And if any of you are not okay about it either, I want you to know you are not alone. Across the world and across the political spectrum, people have begun to see the harms of gender ideology. If you're concerned, here's what you can do. You can take flyers from our table, talk to people you know, organise a coffee group and get yourself informed. You can ask your school about what kind of resources they use to teach health. You can stay calm and respectful to people in your school who might think differently to you, so that we can still coexist peacefully and give space for others to decide for their own children. Most importantly, you can rise up and assume your parental authority, making the time and effort to teach your children your own family values on relationship and sexuality. Thank you, everybody.